Keep Leslie in your pocket. Go to lesliemarshallshow.com/members.
Welcome back to Hour 3 of the Leslie Marshall Show. This is Brad Bannon. I'm pinch hitting for Leslie tonight. And in this hour, we're going to have our usual roundtable. Tonight, we have Pat Garofalo, who is the assistant managing editor of usnews.com. That makes him my editor, and Leslie's too, actually. Also joining us on the panel is our own executive producer, Mark Grimaldi. Let's start with this, guys. The NFL draft starts tonight, and I think they're only drafting in the first round tonight, and then they'll finish it over the weekend, I guess. But Pat, the NFL may make history at some point during the draft, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible if Michael Sam, the University of Missouri defensive end, gets chosen, and he then subsequently makes the team that he gets picked for. He'll be the NFL's first openly gay player, which is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. Let's say let's talk about the question we threw out to the listeners. If Michael Sam gets drafted and makes the team, my question to our listeners, and we can start off with this question panel, is this going to be a big distraction to the team that Michael Sam plays on, or does no one care and it will just be business as usual? Mark, you want to start?
I think that there could be a bit of a media circus, just like, any other time you see, like last year, I can't think of the player that was taken out of Notre Dame. Manti Te'o was taken, and there was a lot of talk that he was a closeted gay man because of the whole issue with the fake girlfriend and everything. And there was supposed to be this big media circus that was going to follow him to San Diego, and he quietly had a very good, consistent year, and you really didn't hear anything else about it again. I think it will be a different story if Michael Sam is drafted, because I think he's going to be an absolute spokesperson for equality in the NFL, and giving everyone a chance regardless of their sexual preference. You just had the issue in the NBA with the racist comments by Donald Sterling, and you saw how strongly the NBA reacted to that. I think in this day of public images being very important, and the 24-hour news cycle online and on television, you're not going to see a team that's going to not want to nip it in the bud if there is any sort of a problem with anyone giving him trouble. But I think it's a business. People are there to make money and sell tickets. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. He's going to sell tickets. People are going to be interested in watching him play because it's a good story. And anybody who's going to give him a hard time, I think the positive experiences from this and the people whose voices are going to be happy about him playing are going to far outweigh the negative. I mean, you're going to see some people who are going to say things that are going to be offensive and are going to probably say some things that are controversial about him playing. But, what player who's broken a barrier in his sport has not had that to deal with? I mean, you think way back to when Jackie Robinson became the first African-American to play in Major League Baseball. Think about the kind of stuff he had to deal with, whereas now, Michael Sam being the first openly gay player in the NFL, he might have to deal with some things here and there, and I give him lots of credit for being very brave in what he's done, but it'll be nowhere near what a guy like Jackie Robinson had to deal with.
Okay. Pat, let me ask you this question. Compared to other leagues, and we had this big controversy with the Miami Dolphins last year, who two of the offensive linemen were going at each other like crazy. The NFL is kind of rough and tumble. I mean, it seems to me a lot of really weird stuff goes on in NFL locker rooms. Not all of it, most of it not good. Do you think this is going to cause a big problem or not? Pat?
I think it doesn't have to. I think the reason we're talking about this distraction thing is because you've heard a lot of kind of NFL insiders, NFL executives, NFL prognosticators say that Sam will be a distraction. I think he's only a distraction if you let him be a distraction. I think the case of Jason Collins, who is a member of the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA and is the first openly gay male in America's 4 major professional sports leagues. His case is really instructive. He joined the team. Sure, there was a spike in media attention for the first couple days and when he played his first game, and then it went away and everyone started evaluating him as a basketball player, and it turns out he's a pretty mediocre professional basketball player, and that's the way it is. He wasn't a distraction to the team. The Nets are in the second round of the playoffs for the first time since 2007, and people just aren't talking about Jason Collins and his sexuality anymore because it doesn't matter. I imagine a similar system will play out if Sam is on a team where they're making a big deal out of it, then it'll be a big deal, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay. Do you have any idea, Pat, which of the teams might be interested in drafting him?
There have been all sorts of whispers over the last couple of days about which team might pick him. I've heard Baltimore, I've heard New England, but you never really know, especially since he's projected to be towards the later end of the draft anyway. For real football reasons, people think he's a little small for the position he plays. So if he gets picked, it'll probably be in the later rounds, and you don't really ever know what's going to happen when the draft gets to that point.
What do you think, Mark?
I think Pat brings up a good point. I mean, you have a very close example of Jason Collins. I don't see why that can't be an example of how things will go with Sam. But I do, find it interesting. I was reading a piece by Dave, I think it's Zirin of Edge of Sports, and he blogs for The Nation as well. And, he does a really good job, analyzing this situation and other situations that are bigger than sports that happen to take place in the world of sports. And I think when you could come down to a controversy is if a team takes, a no-name wide receiver or, a really rough and tumble prospect in like the 7th round when 6th or 7th round when they clearly had a need at linebacker and Sam's been sitting there and isn't taken. Then I think that's the end of the spectrum where you could start to see some things of saying, oh, was he not picked because, he was openly gay? But the complicating factor is he had a rough combine, like Pat said, which so eloquently I agree with, for real football reasons. So there's a lot of angles to this story that I think are out there. But if you look at the guy's body of work in his career, he won Defensive Player of the Year honors in the SEC, at Missouri, and he was really a good football player. So there's plenty of examples. Brad, you follow the dreaded Patriots. As a Bills fan, I have to chuckle as I say that because I'm half kidding and mostly just jealous. But there's plenty of players that look great on tape, and then they go to the combine, and they don't do so hot. But as soon as they're back out there on the field, they play great, and vice versa. There's these combine freaks who have all the numbers that you want, but then they get out on the field and they just don't perform as well. So I think that there's a lot of different scenarios that could be seen where I don't know where he's going to be drafted this weekend. But if I had to bet, I definitely think he's going to be picked. I don't know what you guys think about that. If you had to take a bet on that.
Yeah, I really don't. Yeah, my guess is somebody will. I think someone will probably take him in the draft. It's, I think it's an opportunity for a franchise to make history and make a statement.
Well, that's the other thing. You may have a franchise who's not selling many tickets and looks at it as a revenue stream. I don't think you can discount that. Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of tweets here. Let me read these tweets, and then the panel can react to them. We've got a tweet here from Jeff Crawley, who writes, and I think Jeff is probably right about this, but we can have the panel comment. He says it won't be a distraction because there are lots of gay players already in the league. Pat?
You certainly hear that from time to time. I think the funny thing about this distraction talk is that no one ever worries about, a kind of high draft pick being a distraction for other off-the-field behavior. Like Johnny Manziel, who is going to be might have been drafted already and is going to be drafted very high, had all sorts of off-the-field behavioral stuff, partying too hard, breaking NCAA rules. You don't hear NFL insiders, clutching their pearls and fainting on their couches, worrying about the media circus around Johnny Manziel being a distraction. It's only a player like Michael Sam where we have to worry about this dreaded distraction becoming a thing.
Mark, what do you think?
That's a really good point. I mean, you have plenty of players, who are suspended.
Yeah, the Patriots had a player murdered.
Yeah,
somebody,
I mean,
apparently.
that's a great point, actually. I was going to talk about Justin Blackmon getting suspended again, but what's a better example than Aaron Hernandez? I think the fact that, people would be worried about that when, pro sports is an area where guys are given a second, third, fourth, fifth chances. I mean, look at the story of Michael Vick. So I think to put someone in the same vein as that because they're openly gay is an absolute joke. But, plenty of people will do it. That doesn't make it right. I think the person on Twitter who tweeted the post about the fact that it's not a distraction because there's already plenty of gay players in the league makes a great point. There's just got to be.
Yeah.
If you look at it statistically, in society and in America, there's got to be gay players in the league. There just has to. And I'm sure many players, and their teammates know they are, but they respect their decision to not come out. And I give this kid credit for doing so because many have walked before him who just, for one reason or another, did not want to or felt that they couldn't. And when you see how some people are treated simply because of who they choose to love, I can completely understand. It's hard enough to play in the NFL with all the scrutiny and, just how hard the competition is. There's a reason we all watch, and, it's one of the greatest sports in the world. And it's one of the greatest leagues in the world, and the competition is fierce. To add that pressure on your shoulders that you're going to have to be judged on, I could see why people wouldn't want that, and they may feel that they would be ostracized not only by outside people, but a team's really got to gel in order to be successful. And if your team doesn't take you in and it doesn't go well, I mean, look at, like you said, the situation, Brad, with the Miami Dolphins with Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin. I mean, there's plenty that goes on behind the scenes that we don't hear about until after the fact. So I could see why people in the past have been, afraid or concerned about doing so. And I think that gives Michael Sam, that much more credit for having the guts to say what he said and to come out the way that he did and basically say, yeah, I'm gay and, that so what? Like, I want to be judged as a football player, which is how we should be judged.
Yeah, okay, we have another. Okay, go ahead, Pat.
I mean, I think Mark makes a good point about all sorts of stuff happening in the locker room. Sam was out to his teammates at the University of Missouri last year, and they were so distracted that they won the Cotton Bowl, finished fifth in the nation, and voted Sam their MVP. Like, every team should have a distraction like that.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, okay, let me read this tweet here. Let's see. Let me find it here. Oh, okay. We have a tweet here from Dwayne, who writes, he's probably not going to be drafted. He's a good player, but undersized, but could be a good free agent sign. Mark, you're a great football follower. What do you think about that?
I mean, you do see plenty of players who are undrafted go on to be successful, and I think he's in the mold of, having success at the college level. I really do think he's going to be drafted, regardless of whether or not, he came out as gay. I think if you just grade the player, he had plenty of success on the football field, and plenty of NFL GMs would rather, take that to heart than, how they look at the combine or at their pro day. You have another example, of a higher prospect in the Louisville quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. He was going to be the consensus number one overall pick for most of the year, and then he had a rough pro day, and, people have downgraded him, but he's still going to be chosen in the first round, I believe, or at least in the second round, and a team that chooses him is going to be doing it based on the success he had in college, and they're not going to be as concerned about his pro day or, the game tape. I mean, a lot of that, a lot of NFL minds have different opinions on that.
Okay. We're going to go to break now, but when we come back from break, we're going to resume our roundtable discussion with our executive producer, Mark Grimaldi, and also Pat Garofalo, who is the assistant managing editor for opinion at usnews.com, which kind of makes him my boss and Leslie's, too.
When I was in the third grade, I thought that I was gay, cause I could draw. My uncle was, and I kept my room straight. I told my mom, tears rushing down my face. She's like, Ben, you've loved girls since before pre-K. Tripping. Yeah, I guess she had a point, didn't she? Bunch of stereotypes all in my head. I remember doing the math, like, yeah, I'm good at Little League. A preconceived idea of what it all meant. But those that like the same sex had the characteristics. The right-wing conservative.
We're going to go another round about Michael Sam. Mark, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I was just looking over the tweets in the break, and Pat, I'm sure you've probably heard this, counterpoint. This woman, Diane, at Fairfax51, our question, just so that people know what she's responding to, said, will Michael Sam be drafted and become the NFL's first openly gay player, and if so, what will it mean to the NFL in America? And she responded, if he's good enough, he will be drafted. Gay NFL, no one cares, just no special treatment. And then she says, gay or not, should keep it to yourself. Sex is personal. I'm not going on TV and declaring anything about my sex life. Okay. First of all, if you actually listen to what Michael Sam said, Diane, he wanted to come out on his own terms, because you and I both know if he didn't say anything and then he was just out with his boyfriend or got married to a man, everyone would be like, oh, why didn't he have the guts to say it? This guy is closeted. It's not fair to the team that drafted him. They should have known this, blah, 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 blah. And you're telling me that an NFL player who's openly gay and doesn't say anything about it, that's just going to fly over? No, I mean, the guy has the right to do it on his own terms, and someone who's of that high of a profile, it makes sense. Now, yes, if you want to just talk about a regular citizen who's not in the public eye, fine, I think that makes sense. But I think her point is just completely void of any sort of logic whatsoever, and it's a right-wing talking point I hear all the time is, yeah, that's great that you're gay, but why do you have to shove it down my throat? Why do you have to throw it in my face? Well, I'm sorry, but you know what? Why do you have to... The same thing is, well, why do you have to shove it in my face if you're straight or whatever, that, you have a girlfriend or you don't have a wife? People like to talk about, their lives and things like that. So I think it's regardless of whether or not someone's in the public eye, they have a right to talk about it because they're a human being. And B, the fact that he is in the public eye makes it all that much more understandable why he would do so on his own terms.
Pat, you want to weigh in?
I think Mark nailed it. I mean, for better or for worse, if he had kept it to himself, not tried to hide it, but not broadcast it either, then when some photographer, when some reporter noticed something, it would have become a story, and it would have become a story perhaps when Michael Sam didn't want it to become a story. So I think he's doing the right thing. He's saying, hey, this is it. And to his credit, since he came out, he has largely avoided the media. He refused to give interviews during the combine. He hasn't gone on TV. He hasn't done anything except prepare for the draft and try and show that he's a good football player. He just kind of laid it out there, said, this is who I am, this is how I'm doing it, and then he stepped away. And I think that was actually the right path to take and kind of the path he had to take if he wanted to live a normal life and be in the NFL.
Okay. I want to ask you a more general question about this issue. I'm in the middle of reading a book about the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the title of the book is An Idea Whose Time Has Come. And Pat, has the time for widespread acceptance of gays in all sorts of facets of life, has that time come?
I think if it hasn't come, it's very nearly and inevitably coming. I think you've seen support for gay marriage skyrocket in recent years. You've seen gay athletes come out and everything be okay. You saw some really nasty anti-gay bills in places like Arizona get beaten back down, and the very right-wing governor of Arizona refused to sign it. So I think perhaps the time hasn't quite come, but we are going to get there, and pretty soon the folks who are still anti-gay marriage, who still, believe that an NFL player should just shut up and don't tell, are going to be resigned to the dustbin of history. It's just a matter of time. If you look at any polling on this subject, people of my generation, the millennial generation, just don't care about this. Even more conservative Republican millennials don't get fired up about gay marriage, and they don't have strong feelings on this matter. So it really is, if we're not there right now, and I'm not sure that we are, we're going to be there very soon.
Okay, Mark, why don't you weigh in on this, and then we'll go to break.
I heard, actually, it's funny that you guys mentioned this because I was listening to actually a friend of the show, Mark Levine, who is running for a congressional seat in Virginia. He was interviewed for Washington Post TV, and they had asked him about gay marriage, across the United States, and he was actually pointing to the distinct point that Pat just made about it being generational. And if you look at the generations in the polling, and Brad, I know you are very, in tune to the different polls that are out there. There's a poll that said Massachusetts is the most progressive-minded when it comes to gay marriage, and Alabama is the least progressive-minded when it comes to gay marriage. But if you go within those states and you actually look at the oldest people, the oldest voting bloc in Massachusetts, only 40% of the oldest voting bloc supports gay marriage. But if you go to the most conservative state on this point, Alabama, the youngest voting bloc in Alabama, 60% of them support gay marriage. So I think that absolutely speaks to the point that Pat brought up on this.
Yeah, actually, it's appropriate that Massachusetts has the strongest gay marriage opinions because Massachusetts was the first state, I believe, back in 2003 or 2004 to legalize gay marriage. Anyway, let's go to break now. And when we get back, we'll rejoin our roundtable with our own executive producer, Mark Grimaldi, and Pat Garofalo, who is the assistant managing editor for Opinion at usnews.com. We'll be back after these messages.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of truth. The Leslie Marshall Show. 888-6-LESLIE. Keep Leslie in your pocket. Go to lesliemarshallshow.com/members.
This is Brad Bannon, and this is hour 3 and our last of tonight's Leslie Marshall Show. We have a political roundtable, as we usually do when I do the show in the third hour. Our roundtable tonight consists of Pat Garofalo, who is the assistant managing editor for Opinion at usnews.com, and our own executive producer, Mark Grimaldi. But before we get back to Pat and to Mark, we have a caller on the line, Carol from Wisconsin. Carol, how you doing tonight?
Hi, guys. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that tweet where the person said Michael Sam should keep his gay life to himself.
Okay.
It's a double standard. Why is it when straight people show us pictures of their families, it's called sharing? But when gay people come out and show us pictures of their families, it's called flaunting. There's a double standard. You'd never say that to a black person like in the 60s when we don't like it that you're African American, please, just be black at home or something like that.
Yeah, such a good point.
Or when straight people, they say straight people have a life, but then when you talk about gay people, we have a lifestyle. I mean, another double standard. The only thing that concerns me about Michael Sams is I hope he doesn't get hurt on the field, with the homophobia that is still very prevalent, I think, in this country.
I never really thought about that point. That's an interesting point you bring up there, Carol. Maybe he'll be all right because he's on defense at least, hopefully.
Oh, see, I'm not much of a sports person, but I mean, I know here in Wisconsin we take our football very seriously.
Yes.
Yes, you do.
No, that is a good point, though. You wonder how a player will be treated, in the actual game. But you know what? Those are Brad, you're a baseball historian. What are some of the things they would do to Jackie Robinson in game? I can't think of.
Oh, God, it was pretty deaf. I mean, during the games, players and fans would yell racial, slurs. And the most famous example, of course, is some of his players some of his own teammates wouldn't eat with him, and he was a base stealer, a very good base stealer, and players, second basemen, went out of their way to spike him when he tried to steal second base. So it was very ugly, and a lot of people, and myself included, admired his coverage because he dealt with it very matter-of-factly. In fact, that's when he was brought to the major leagues, the Dodgers general manager, Branch Rickey, had groomed Robinson in the minor leagues to be the first black player because he had a fair, he was not hot-tempered or anything. He basically, Jackie Robinson took what he got and showed people what he was made of by playing the game at a very high level. So he got a lot of stuff. And, one of the other things that was important back in the, I think he came up in 1947, a very high percentage of Major League Baseball players were from the South. And that made it very difficult for Robinson. But, one of the interesting stories about that is that one of his teammates on the Dodgers, who was their shortstop, Pee Wee Reese, who was a very good shortstop, he was a Southerner, and Reese decided that he was going to bring the team together, and he went out of his way to be friendly to Robinson. And the rest of the team thought, well, he's a Southerner. If it's okay with him, it's okay with us. So it took a lot. He was a courageous man to put up with all that stuff, but he did, and baseball's all the better for it. Do we still have Carol?
Yes, I'm still here.
Carol, let me ask you a question that I asked the panel before. Do you think that acceptance of gays in all facets of American life, is that an idea whose time has come, or do we still have a ways to go?
I think we still have a ways to go, but I'm in my 50s, and the young people that are coming up are so accepting, and the generation is definitely changing. I see a lot of positive things happening. But I still see a lot of homophobia, especially where I am from here in southeastern Wisconsin, and I think we still have a ways to go. But I see a lot of the younger generation coming up who just have come to me and say, "Well, what's the big deal? Why can't you get married?" And I'm just floored when I hear some of these comments from these younger people, and I'm talking about younger people in their 20s and 30s, but. I'm a little older than that now, but so I'm hopeful. I hope I can get married someday. In Wisconsin, we have it's very detrimental here. If I get married in another state, I can be thrown in jail for 9 months and fined $10,000. So we can't get married.
It's completely
here.
asinine. I mean, that shows you that's completely asinine, and that shows you, maybe something like Michael Sam coming out, and hey, you never know, maybe he gets drafted by the Packers and wants to get married there. I mean, that's the thing. I think there are some distinct possibilities about a player of public profile in the NFL enacting social change.
I'm proud of him. I wish
him
the best. I am so happy for him. I just had the concern that I hope someone else doesn't take it out on him, is to try to teach him a lesson like you were telling me about Jackie Robinson and what he had to go through. But football is a much more brutal sport, but not to discount what Jackie Robinson had to go through. I mean, that was awful. But that's about all I had to say.
Okay.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks for calling in, Carol. Always good to hear from you. I think, first of all, I want to react to something you said, Mark, is that you're right about the generational splits on the issue of gay marriage. If you look at the millennial generation, which Pat is a part of, my two kids are both millennials, they overwhelmingly support gay marriage. I mean, we're talking like, 70 to 20 or something like that. But seniors are very resistant to the idea. And that tells me that it's just a matter of time before there's widespread acceptance of gay marriage, because the reality is that the generational change is pushing hard in that direction. What do you think, Pat?
I mean, I think that's absolutely right, and I think Mark actually made a good point about people like Michael Sam moving this ball forward, if you will. You need people in these high-profile places of culture and sports in order to change minds, in order to show the country that they're just like everyone else. I mean, every year the 10 most watched television shows are football games, year in and year out. So having a high-profile NFL player be out and have it be normal and have it not be a big deal, I think is actually going to help increase, have that day when it is just not a big deal be one day sooner.
Yeah. I definitely think it's just a matter of time, and it won't be a lot of time until gay marriage is, accepted widely. We talked about the generational split, but I have felt strongly that a true sign that gay marriage was becoming, gay relationships, gay marriage becoming acceptable, was when I was watching the Super Bowl, speaking of football, and Coke ran an ad, and it showed all sorts of people, different races, religions, but it also showed a gay couple with their daughter. And I remember thinking when I saw this, wow, if it's good enough for Coke, it's just a matter of time. And I hope I'm right about that, and I think I am. Carol said, and I totally agree with this, that if you talk about it with millennials like my kids, they just don't see why it's such a big deal. I think most millennials have friends who are gay and just can't figure out why it's such a big deal, because they've never made it a big deal in their lives and their relationships with their gay friends. So hopefully this will all sort out. I want to thank our panel. It was an interesting discussion. I didn't expect to talk about Michael Sam and gay marriage for the entire hour, but radio shows are organic, so here we go. Anyway, I want to thank our panel, which is Pat Garofalo from U.S. News and World Report, and our own executive producer, Mark Grimaldi. That's it for me.